today's spooky spot, we are now finished the reviews, the spooky spots of all the Toy Island, Universal Studios home of the original monsters. We're having a look today at the Frankenstein 14-inch Build-A-Figure. Now this figure is very large. In fact, he's so very tall I kind of have to move the camera further up. As you will see, the majority of the figure is still, well, the majority of the lower half of the figure is down below where Spot normally does all his reviews, but Frankenstein definitely is quite a bit taller. He is an extremely heavy figure. By comparison, I would say even things like the Marvel Legends Sentinel, Apocalypse, Giant Man, I think by weight-wise, the Frankenstein here is a lot heavier. Heavier than really what I was expecting. The figure as a whole is extremely nice, and while initially I thought he was a larger scaled-up version to the 6-inch Frankenstein, he actually is a different figure. There are some aspects like the jacket, perhaps the hands, and even really the legs. And you know what? Even as I say that, the one thing that I wanted to talk about before was Frankenstein's legs. You can see, as I mentioned before, how there's this little ledge, this extra piece. I'm not sure why they incorporated that. For a second, I was going to say, well, the 6-inch also has it, but he actually doesn't. He has the ledge, the little lip right here, right under his knee, but he doesn't have that secondary piece. If you compare it to the larger Frankenstein, you can see there is a complete extra piece there, almost as if they added it to give him that extra length. I'm not sure the reasoning for that. Perhaps it's just, again, they didn't have quite 14 inches, so they added an extra piece to it. That's the only thing I can think of. But it is a bit interesting. By comparison, you can see 6-inch Frankenstein versus what ended up being the 14-inch Frankenstein in back. Also, if I move the camera further up, you know what? I might even have to sit Frankenstein down. You know what? I'll just even bring him down like this. You guys can probably even see. Face-wise, it's a good-looking face, though again, it's much wider. If I bring in 6-inch, there he is. It's much wider than the 6-inch Frankenstein. And it's interesting because I thought it would have been the same sculpt, but 6-inch Frankenstein is much more slender in the face than what we would have gotten with the 14-inch Frankenstein. So it doesn't look like it is quite the exact same figure. It's a little bit different. Articulation, though, despite the fact that it's a much larger figure, the articulation seems to be the exact same. In the way of his articulation, he does have a rotation in the head, like so. The arms are on a pin and socket, so they move out. They move forward, back, bend at the elbow, rotation in the hand. It does have a swivel in the waist. The legs, now unfortunately the legs are becoming a bit of an issue. They don't seem to really move forward. They possibly might move out, but I can't really get anything to get moving on the legs themselves. Of course, they swivel at the thigh just due to the way that they're connected. He has a bend at the knee and a hinged foot. I don't know why his leg doesn't seem like there's really much. There really should be down below there. There really is a joint, but it doesn't look like you can actually move it. In fact, on the side, you can see that hinge. That hinge, okay, so the leg does move out. Perhaps you might actually have to, this is the one time this one figure, you might actually have to move that joint around to move the leg forward, as Frankenstein just did karate kick. So, it's not horrible, because I'm not probably going to be posing, nor do I think anyone who probably bought this figure or got the pieces to build this figure, probably, they're not going to have him sitting. They're probably going to have him standing, doing essentially what he's doing right now. Hands out, you know, ready to scare the townfolk. He is really a nice figure, though. And I think as a Halloween decoration, he is really a crowning jewel to have on display. He's big, he's beefy, he's weighted. I feel as if Toy Island really put a lot of effort into making this figure. It doesn't feel flimsy, it doesn't feel light, it doesn't feel hollow either. It feels like a really weighted figure. Of the other 14-inch and larger build-a-figures that Spot's been building over the course of his collecting, I think he's probably one of the heavier of those figures. He's definitely heavier than Sentinel. He's definitely heavier than Apocalypse. He feels, again, quite beefy. Frankenstein, I think I'm going to give Frankenstein an 8. A very terrifying 8. He's big, he's large, and I'm not really all that bothered by the fact that we've already gotten a 6-inch Frankenstein. Therefore, why are we needing to get a 14-inch? Frankenstein is so iconic that to get a 14-inch version of the figure, I have no qualms with him whatsoever. It's just a shame, really, that Toy Island couldn't have produced a Series 2. Maybe we would have gotten other, other iconic characters in 6-inch form. I don't really know what they would have done and trumped this Frankenstein. I really don't know what they would have done with a Series 2. Perhaps we would have gotten a Dracula. Maybe we would have even gotten a Bride of. I don't really know, but I'm really happy with this Frankenstein. Super glad that I was able to finally open these and review them and build this behemoth. Having said that, we're going to move the camera back down to normal territory. The figures themselves I've been extremely impressed with. Again, they have kind of borderline of being a retro figure that we would have gotten from an earlier line, like we're talking back 70s, 80s. But with the additional articulation, it's kind of been the best of both worlds. My favorite figures, I think by far, my favorite figure is still the Dracula. The likeness, though again not quite there, the likeness is still really good, and it's a lot better than some of the other figures from a Dracula line than we have gotten. Dracula is definitely my favorite. I'm going to put him down there. And really, Spot has not even had a chance to show all the figures together until now. My next favorite figure, obviously, was Frankenstein. I think they did a good job on him. You can see he is a little bit taller than Dracula. Next favorite figure, I would probably say, is the Mummy. I think the Mummy is good. It's not the... Again, it's probably, by comparison, it's about the same to Diamond Select by sculpt and by paint. I probably would say next is Wolfman. Standing, a little bit of an issue. He has a little more of like a woodchuck kind of face. And lastly, I think the Creature. A really solid lineup. Again, it's a real shame. Oh, there we go. It's a real shame that Toy Island couldn't have done more with this line, as the Creature is again in half. It's a shame that they weren't able to do more with this line. A Series 2, a Series 3 really would have been awesome to see. But I certainly have to commend Toy Island, wherever they may be. They might be a distant memory. But they did such a fantastic job on this line of figures. It only makes me think, oh, if only they had done a Series 2. But I hope you guys have enjoyed it. This October, Spot wanted to do something special, so I dusted off, I blew the dust off the Toy Island, Universal Studios, home of the original Monsters, Frankenstein series figures, and we're having a look at all the figures that made up this line. Certainly, stay tuned. Spot's got, even though this may seem like the coup de... I don't even know what they call it, the coup de grace, the pièce de résistance. Don't worry, Spot's still got more spooky spots heading your way this October. Thanks for watching, as you always do, guys. I will see you guys next time. Woo! Bye.